I need you to stop what you're doing right now. And I mean really stop, because what I'm about to tell you in the next few minutes could be the most important thing you hear all year. And I don't say that lightly. I say it because I have sat across from hundreds of patients in my office, patients just like you, people who were doing everything right, taking their vitamins, following their doctor's advice, trying so hard to stay healthy, and they were still getting sicker, still getting more tired, still losing their memory, still feeling weaker every single month, and nobody could tell them why, until we found the answer. And today, that answer is what I want to share with you. If you are over 60 and you take a B12 supplement, and millions of Americans do, and you also take either a common acid reflux medication or a blood pressure and diabetes medication called Metformin, you could be silently creating one of the most dangerous nutritional traps I see in my entire practice every single day, without feeling a thing, until it's serious. I know that sounds alarming. Stay with me, because I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what is happening inside your body, exactly why this combination is so problematic, and exactly what simple steps you can take, starting this week, to protect yourself. My name is Dr. Anderson, and I have spent over 2 decades in clinical practice watching this exact problem go undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, and dismissed as just getting older. It is not just getting older, and today we are going to talk about it. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Comment below right now. Tell me where you're watching from, and tell me whether you currently take a B12 supplement. I read every single comment, and knowing who's in this community helps me bring you the information that matters most to you personally. Now, let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret was 74 years old when I first met her, and she was one of those people who made you feel tired just watching her energy. She walked 2 miles every single morning. She volunteered at her church on Tuesdays. She cooked from scratch every day. She was sharp, funny, warm, and completely, fiercely independent. She was doing everything right, and then, slowly, something began to change. Over about 18 months, Margaret started forgetting words mid-sentence. She would reach for a name, her neighbor's name, her grandchild's birthday, and it just wasn't there anymore. She started waking up exhausted no matter how much she slept. Her legs felt heavy. She described it to me once by saying, "Doctor, it feels like someone filled my body with wet sand." And she was scared. She thought she was losing herself. Her previous doctor had run blood work. Her B12 levels looked completely normal on paper. So everyone assumed this was just aging, just what getting older looked like. Nobody dug deeper. Nobody connected the dots. And here's the tragic part. Margaret had been taking a proton pump inhibitor, a common acid reflux medication that you would absolutely recognize by name, for 6 years. And every single morning she was faithfully taking her B12 supplement because she had read it was good for seniors. Those two things together, the medication she needed and the supplement she was trying to help herself with, were creating a silent nutritional trap that her body simply could not escape from, and nobody caught it. When I finally understood what was happening and adjusted her protocol and made the simple changes we are going to talk about today, Margaret told me something I will never forget. She said, "Doctor, I thought that fog was just who I was becoming. I didn't know I could get myself back." Margaret is 81 years old now, still walking, still volunteering, still making Sunday dinner for her whole family. Her story is not rare. I see versions of it every single week. And this is exactly why I make these videos. Here is the good news, and I really need you to hear this. This is not permanent. This is not something you have to accept. What I am describing to you today is well documented, well understood, and completely manageable once you know what you are dealing with. A landmark study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine in 2022 followed over 1,800 adults aged 60 and older who were on long-term proton pump inhibitors. The researchers found that these participants had a 41% higher rate of clinically low functional B12 levels, even when their standard blood tests looked completely normal. In plain language, this means a regular blood test can tell both you and your doctor that everything is fine, while your cells are actually starving for a nutrient they desperately need. And a 2023 review published in the journal Nutrients confirmed that metformin, one of the most prescribed medications in the entire United States, directly depletes B12 absorption in the gut, with up to 30% of long-term users developing a measurable deficiency over time. 30%. That is nearly 1 in 3 people, and most of them have no idea. Now, I want to be very clear before we go any further. I am not telling you to stop your medications. Please do not stop any medication based on a YouTube video. What I am telling you is that there is a smarter, safer way to manage your B12 alongside these drugs, and the research is very clear on this. And your doctor may not have brought it up yet simply because not every clinician keeps up with every new study. That is not a criticism. That is just the reality of how medicine works. And it is exactly why you watching videos like this one matters. So, let's get into the heart of this, because I want to explain what is actually happening inside your body, because once you understand the mechanism, everything is going to make complete sense, and you will never forget it. B12 is a very large, very complex vitamin. It is nothing like vitamin C, which your body can absorb easily and passively. B12 needs a very specific protein called intrinsic factor, which is produced in your stomach lining to even get through your gut wall and into your bloodstream. Think of intrinsic factor like a specialized key, and the wall of your intestine like a locked door with one very specific keyhole. Without that key, B12 simply passes right through your body, no matter how much of it you swallow. It just goes in and comes right back out. Now, proton pump inhibitors, medications like omeprazole, lansoprazole, esomeprazole, pantoprazole, and others. These work by powerfully reducing the acid in your stomach. That is their entire purpose, and they do it very effectively. But here is the problem that most people never hear about. That stomach acid is absolutely essential for releasing B12 from the food you eat and from your supplement capsule, and for activating the intrinsic factor that carries B12 into your system. When you reduce the acid, you interrupt that entire chain reaction. The key never gets properly made. The door stays locked. Your B12 goes in, and it comes right back out, day after day after day. And this does not happen overnight. That is the cruel part. It can take 2, 3, even 5 or 6 years of regular PPI use before your body's stored B12 reserves become depleted enough to cause symptoms you can actually feel. And that slow, silent onset is exactly why so many people miss it entirely. They do not connect the fatigue they feel at 72 with the acid reflux medication they started at 66. They connect it with aging. And that connection, that wrong conclusion, robs them of years of quality of life. Comment yes below right now if you are currently taking a medication for acid reflux or GERD. I want to get a sense of how many people watching this are affected by this right now. Here is something critically important that most people miss about this first piece of the puzzle. The type of B12 supplement you take matters enormously when acid suppression is involved. The most common form of B12 in drugstore vitamins, the cheap form called cyanocobalamin, requires a series of conversion steps by your body, and those conversion steps are particularly vulnerable to being disrupted when stomach acid is reduced. What you want to ask your doctor about is methylcobalamin, the already converted, immediately bioavailable form of B12 that your body can actually use without those extra steps. And even better, there is a sublingual form of methylcobalamin, a small tablet that dissolves under your tongue, that bypasses the gut absorption problem almost entirely because it enters your bloodstream directly through the tissue under your tongue, completely skipping the stomach acid process that is being blocked. This one simple change in the form of B12 you take can make a significant difference. Write that down. Methylcobalamin, sublingual. Discuss it with your doctor. But even understanding this first piece won't fully protect you if you are also taking metformin, because metformin works through a completely different and equally important mechanism, and this is where things get really serious. Metformin is one of the most prescribed drugs in the world for type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. It is generally safe, it is effective, it is well tolerated. But what most patients, and honestly, even many doctors, do not fully appreciate is that metformin actively competes with B12 for absorption in your intestines, not passively, not incidentally. It actively gets in the way of the same transport system your body uses to absorb B12. Think of it like two people trying to get through the same narrow doorway at exactly the same time. One of them is going to lose, and unfortunately, very often it is your B12 that loses. A study published in the journal Diabetes Care in 2021 analyzed data from over 4,000 patients with type 2 diabetes who were on long-term metformin therapy. The researchers found that 26% of those patients, more than 1 in 4, had B12 levels low enough to cause neurological damage. And critically, many of them had been on metformin for more than 5 years without a single B12 check, not one. Now, why does this matter so much? Not just for your energy levels, but for your heart and your brain. Because B12 is not simply a fatigue vitamin. B12 is absolutely essential for something called myelin, the protective sheath that wraps around your nerve fibers the way rubber insulation wraps around an electrical wire. When B12 is low, that insulation begins to break down. Nerve signals start misfiring, and that shows up in your daily life as memory problems, difficulty concentrating, tingling or numbness in your hands and feet, loss of balance, mood changes, and the one that concerns me most as a clinician, elevated homocysteine levels. Homocysteine is an amino acid that, when it builds up in the blood, significantly increases your risk of heart attack and stroke. And low B12 is one of the primary drivers of elevated homocysteine. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert was 69 years old, a retired school teacher, and he came to me for a routine cardiac check. His blood pressure was controlled, his cholesterol was reasonable, but he mentioned, almost in passing, that he had been having trouble with his balance. He had fallen twice in the past year, and that his hands had been tingling for several months. He had been on metformin for 11 years. In those 11 years, not one doctor had ever checked his B12 level, not once. When we ran a comprehensive evaluation, his B12 was critically depleted. His homocysteine was nearly 3 times the upper limit of normal. We corrected his B12 through supplementation and dietary adjustments, worked with his primary care doctor on his medication timing, and 8 weeks later he called my office and said, "Doctor, the tingling is almost completely gone, and I haven't fallen once." That is not a small thing. Falls in adults over 65 are the leading cause of injury-related death in this country. Robert's B12 deficiency was, without exaggeration, a life-threatening situation that had been dismissed as normal aging for years. If you have been on metformin for more than 3 years, here is exactly what you need to ask for at your next appointment. Write this down. Ask your doctor for a methylmalonic acid test and a homocysteine test, not just a standard B12 serum test. Specifically, those two. Methylmalonic acid, homocysteine, because standard serum B12 tests, and this brings us to perhaps the most important piece of everything we are discussing today, are simply not reliable enough to tell the full story on their own. Before we go into this last critical piece, I have a quick request. If you are finding this valuable, and I hope you truly are, please click the subscribe button right now. My entire mission with this channel is to bring you accurate, clinically grounded information that can genuinely protect your quality of life. Every person who subscribes tells me that this work matters. Thank you. You are part of this community now. Here is the part that surprises even some of my colleagues when I bring it up in medical settings. The standard blood test for B12, the one your doctor orders as part of your routine lab panel, measures total B12 in your bloodstream, but some of that B12 is bound to proteins in a way that makes it completely unavailable to your cells, biologically inactive, so you can have a blood result come back in the perfectly normal range, say 280 picograms per milliliter, and your doctor looks at it and says, "You're fine." And at the cellular level, you are running on empty. Your gas gauge says half full, your tank is cracked and leaking. A 2022 meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition reviewed 47 separate studies and concluded that serum B12 testing alone misses up to 35% of clinically significant deficiencies in adults over 60. 35%. That means more than 1 in 3 seniors with a real, dangerous, neurologically damaging B12 deficiency will walk out of their doctor's office being told their levels look fine because the test itself is incomplete. And this problem is made worse by the fact that the reference ranges most American laboratories use for normal B12 were established largely based on younger, healthier adult populations. Many geriatric specialists and neurologists now argue that adults over 60 may need B12 levels at the higher end of, or even slightly above, standard reference ranges to adequately protect brain function, nerve function, and cardiovascular health. The goalposts may need to move, and most standard lab reports haven't caught up to that reality. Comment, learn more below. If you have ever been told your B12 is normal, but you still experience fatigue, brain fog, tingling, or memory issues. I want to see how many of you this applies to because I suspect it is more than most people realize. So what is the practical solution? Here is exactly what you do. At your next appointment, and I want you to schedule this appointment this week, not next month, this week, ask your doctor for a full functional B12 evaluation. Tell them you specifically want methylmalonic acid and homocysteine levels tested, not just serum B12. Explain that you are on a proton pump inhibitor or metformin or both, and that you want to evaluate your actual functional B12 status at the cellular level. If your doctor is not familiar with this distinction or seems dismissive, you have every right as a patient to ask for a referral to an internist, a geriatric medicine specialist, or a functional medicine physician who routinely evaluates these markers. And here is the pro tip that ties this all together. If you take an oral B12 supplement and you are also on metformin, separate your B12 from your metformin dose by at least 2 full hours. Give your gut a window where it is not competing. And if you are on a proton pump inhibitor, talk to your doctor or pharmacist about switching from a daily oral cyanocobalamin tablet to a twice or 3 times weekly sublingual methylcobalamin. Sublingual delivery sidesteps the stomach acid problem entirely. It is the same vitamin, just delivered in a way that actually reaches your bloodstream. The timing, the form, the delivery method, these are not small details. They are the difference between a supplement that works and one that just passes through you doing nothing. Now let me bring all of this together, because I want you to leave today with absolute clarity and a plan you can act on immediately. Here is what we covered. Proton pump inhibitors, the acid reflux medications taken by tens of millions of Americans, reduce stomach acid in a way that blocks the essential process your body uses to absorb B12. This effect builds silently over years, which is why so many seniors are depleted without ever knowing it. Metformin, one of the most widely used diabetes medications in the world, actively competes with B12 for absorption in the gut, with research showing that more than 1 in 4 long-term users develop a significant deficiency that is directly linked to nerve damage, balance problems, memory loss, and increased cardiovascular risk. And standard B12 blood tests are not reliable enough on their own. Asking your doctor for methylmalonic acid and homocysteine testing gives you a far more accurate and actionable picture of what is actually happening inside your cells. Here is your action plan. Tonight, go to your medicine cabinet and write down every medication and supplement you take. Look specifically for any medication ending in the letters PRAZOLE, that is a proton pump inhibitor, and look for metformin. Just identify what you are dealing with. That is tonight's task. This week, call your doctor's office and schedule an appointment to discuss your B12 status. Tell the receptionist you want to discuss nutrient absorption and a functional lab evaluation. When you get there, ask specifically for methylmalonic acid and homocysteine testing. You can reference the 2021 Diabetes Care Study and the 2022 Annals of Internal Medicine study if it helps support your conversation. Also, this week, go to your pharmacy or health food store and look at your current B12 supplement. Check the label. If it says cyanocobalamin, ask the pharmacist about switching to methylcobalamin, specifically a sublingual form that dissolves under the tongue. This switch is safe to make on your own. It does not interact with anything. It is just a smarter form of the same vitamin. Comment action below if you are going to make that doctor's appointment this week. I want to hear from you. I want to know you are taking this seriously because you are worth it. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with one final story, because this one still moves me every time I think about it. Dorothy was 77 years old when her daughter brought her to see me. Dorothy was convinced she was developing dementia. She had seen 2 neurologists. She had had brain scans. She had been told by multiple doctors that what they found was normal for her age, and yet she was forgetting her grandchildren's names. She couldn't finish a conversation without losing her train of thought entirely. She felt, in her own quiet, heartbreaking words, like the lights were slowly going out. Dorothy had been on a proton pump inhibitor for 8 years for GERD and on Metformin for 6 years for prediabetes. In all those years of seeing specialists, good doctors, well-meaning doctors, not one person had run a comprehensive B12 evaluation. When we did, methylmalonic acid, homocysteine, the complete picture, her functional B12 status was critically depleted. Her homocysteine was dangerously elevated, nearly 3 times the upper limit of normal, silently increasing her stroke risk every single day. We corrected her B12. We adjusted the form and timing of her supplementation. We worked collaboratively with her other doctors, and 3 months later, Dorothy called my office. She was crying. Happy tears. She said, "Dr. Anderson, I remembered every single name at my granddaughter's birthday party. Everyone." And then, after a pause, she said very quietly, "I thought I was disappearing. I didn't know it was something this fixable." Dorothy is 83 years old now. She lives independently. She calls every Christmas. This is why I make these videos. Not to frighten you, but because I believe with everything in me that you deserve to have this information. You have more control over your health than you may have been led to believe. Small changes, made with the right knowledge and implemented consistently, create real and measurable results. You are not just aging. You are not broken. And you are absolutely not alone in this. Now I want you to do 3 things before you close this video. First, if this could help someone you love, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a friend over 60 who takes any of these medications, please share it right now. It takes 5 seconds and it genuinely could change someone's life. Second, subscribe if you haven't yet, because every week I bring you exactly this kind of clinically grounded, practically useful information, and I don't want you to miss any of it. And third, leave me a comment. Comment B12 if you take a B12 supplement and didn't know about this interaction until today. Comment medications if you are on a PPI or Metformin and this video opened your eyes to something new. Comment question if there's something specific you want me to cover in a future video. I read every single one. Please bookmark this video, bring it to your doctor, show it to the people you care about. You now have the information, use it. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Take good care of yourself. This is Dr. Anderson, and I will see you in the next video.